There is ice on the inside of your bedroom window. Not frost, ice. You scratch it with your thumbnail and it leaves a curl of white. You have been doing this every morning since before Christmas, as if checking it might finally stop. It never does. The cold sits in the room before you are even out of bed. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of January, 1979. You are 15. The radiator in your room has not worked since the autumn. Your dad keeps saying he will have a look at it. He has stopped saying when. Downstairs, Mum is at the sink. She has been up since 5. She works at Sayers, and your dad has just come off nights at the docks. His donkey jacket is hanging on the back door, the shoulders dark where the rain got in. The kitchen window is wet with condensation. The kettle is on the gas. There is sunblest on the side, Marmite, and jam, if there is any left. The transistor is on. Radio 1, Dave Lee Travis. Boney M, the Christmas one, still hanging around after Christmas like the decorations nobody has taken down yet. The song sounds too cheerful for the kitchen. Mum does not ask you about school. She asks if you are going round your nan's later. You say yes. You always say yes now. Nan has been bad since November. Mum has not said the word properly, but the way she folds the tea towel says it for her. Careful, tight, like one wrong movement might make the whole morning come apart. Then the 8 o'clock news comes on. The voice is calm. The voice is always calm. Something about the lorry drivers, something about talks, something about shortages if it carries on. Mum reaches across and turns the radio down without asking your dad if she can. He does not look up. School, she says. Don't be late. Keep your scarf on this time. You go. By the second Monday of January, the bins on Granby Street have not been collected for days. The bags are split where cats have been at them. There is a smell, even in the cold, sour and thick near the shop fronts. At first, everyone talks about it. Then they stop. That is worse, really. When something bad stays long enough, people start walking around it like furniture. Your mate Tommy says his dad reckons the bin men are right. You ask what your dad thinks, and he shrugs. Your dad does not say much now. He comes off nights, reads the Echo, drinks tea, and looks like he is somewhere else. At school, everyone has an opinion because everyone has heard one at home. The teachers tell you to stop talking about strikes and get on with your work. Then the classroom radiator knocks twice, goes cold, and everyone laughs because nobody knows what else to do. After school, you go to Nan's. She is in her chair with a blanket over her knees and the 2-bar fire on. The flat smells of camphor and gas. She asks about school and you tell her the music teacher might be leaving. She says good, he was no use anyway, even though she has never met him. You laugh because she wants you to. When you leave, Mum is already there. You hear her in the kitchen, speaking low. She says she rang the doctor again. She says the receptionist told her they were short-staffed. She says the hospital workers might be next. Nobody says what that means for Nan. On the bus home, you watch the rubbish bags pass the window. Toxteth, Liverpool 8, January. Bags outside shops, bags against walls, bags torn open and shining wet under the streetlights. The conductor says nothing about them. Nobody does. You stop noticing after a while. That is the part that should worry someone. On Monday, the 22nd of January, the news gets worse. The lorry drivers are staying out. Hospital ancillary workers are walking out too. The calm voice on the radio says some hospitals are taking emergency cases only, and even that sounds uncertain. Mum goes very still at the sink. She does not turn round. Get your bag, she says. You'll miss the bus. That night you hear your parents through the wall. Mum first, low, asking about money. Then your dad. He does not shout often. He shouts now. "Don't start with me, Eileen." 3 words, then quiet. You lie there in the cold and listen to the quiet, and you do not move. In the morning, nobody mentions it. Dad does not look at Mum. Mum puts the toast on the side. You eat it. By Tuesday afternoon, the school caretaker is not in. There is no proper heat, and they send you home early. Nobody cheers much. It sounds good until you are walking back through streets where the bin bags have been there so long they have stopped being news. A dog is on top of one, working at it. You do not shoo it away. Nobody does. At Nan's, the front room is colder than it should be. The 2-bar fire is only on 1 bar. Mum is there, and has been there since after work. Nan's breathing is loud. You can hear it from the hall. "Go and put the kettle on, our kid," Mum says. So you go. On the kitchen side, there is a tin of Heinz tomato soup, half a loaf, and a packet of Findus crispy pancakes. The gas is not right. The kettle takes a long time. You stand there listening to Nan's breathing from the other room and suddenly feel younger than 15. When you come back with the tea, your dad has arrived. He is still in his donkey jacket. He does not sit. He looks at Mum. Mum looks at him. The transistor is on low, and Ian Dury is playing now, sharp and strange and too alive for that room. You reach across and turn it off without thinking. "I'll go and try the phone box on the corner," your dad says. He means for an ambulance. He does not say it. You do not say it. He just goes. Nan opens her eyes and looks at you. She says your name like she is checking you are real. Then she closes them again. The ambulance comes in the end. It takes 2 hours. Nan is taken to the Royal, but not to a ward. She is in a corridor on a trolley because the wards are short-staffed and nobody seems able to move people where they are meant to go. The corridor is long. The lights are too bright. There is still a Christmas decoration above the doors that nobody has taken down. On Friday after school, you go in with Mum's flask of tea. She has been there in shifts with your Auntie Pat. Her face looks older than it did on Monday. Nan is asleep when you get there. Her hand on top of the blanket looks smaller than it did last week. A nurse comes past and says they are doing what they can. She says it kindly, but it sounds worn out before it reaches the end of the sentence. She has been on for hours. Her shoes squeak on the floor. Mum says, "Sit with her a bit. I'm going for some air." So you sit. You do not know what to do with your hands. There is no radio here. No music. Nothing except the squeak of shoes, low voices, and a man 2 trolleys down coughing in his sleep. You watch Nan's chest go up and down. You count the gaps between breaths because you read somewhere that this is what people do, though you do not know what you are meant to do with the number. After a while, Nan opens her eyes. She looks at you. "You're a good lad," she says. Then she closes her eyes again. Mum comes back. The nurse passes again. Nothing changes. You go home on the bus in the dark. Nan dies on the Saturday morning. The funeral cannot happen when Mum wants it to. The gravediggers strike and the backlog have made everything slow, and nobody can give the family a straight answer. Mum keeps writing things down on the back of an envelope, then crossing them out. Your dad says he will sort it. He does not know how. On Sunday, the snow comes back. You stand at the kitchen window and watch it settle on the bin bags down the street. For an hour, everything looks clean. The bags turn white. The pavement turns white. Even the broken rubbish outside the shops looks soft and quiet. But it is still there under the snow. Your dad is at the table with the Echo open and a mug of tea gone cold. He has not turned the page in 20 minutes. Mum is at Nan's flat with Auntie Pat, sorting through drawers and cupboards and things nobody wants to touch. You are meant to be doing homework. The transistor is on. You do not remember turning it on. Ian Dury comes on again, and you reach over to turn it off. Then you don't. You let it play. Your dad does not look up. Outside, the snow keeps coming. On the news at 12, the calm voice says talks are continuing. The lorry drivers, the hospital workers, the grave diggers, continuing. They keep using that word like it has weight, like it does something. Your dad lets out a sound that is not quite a laugh. He folds the echo, goes into the front room, and shuts the door. You stay at the window. The bin bags are still under the snow. They will be there next week, and maybe the week after. By May, the country will look different, but you do not know that yet. You are 15. It is Sunday. Your nan is gone. And outside, Britain is still waiting for someone to collect the rubbish. If you remember that winter, tell us what it was like where you were. Not just the headlines, the ordinary things, the cold rooms, the bins, the buses, the hospitals, the waiting. That is the part history forgets.